Welcome back to the Ocarina of Time 3D playthrough. This part will be speedrun trivia and nothing but speedrunning trivia. You know what? No, I'm not reading this MBM. This part will cover the Fire Temple.
Do you notice anything different about the music playing in Kakariko Village, as opposed to last time we were here?
Well, last time we were here it was nighttime, so there wasn't any music playing at all.
Okay, fine. Well then, as opposed to when we were here as a child.
And it was daytime.
Yes.
Okay, it sounds a bit more full, maybe a bit more melancholy.
Yeah, and it should, because if you actually look in the Ocarina of Time 3D OST, there are actually two different tracks for Kakariko Village. You have the track that plays when Link is a child, and then you have the track that plays when Link is an adult. They literally made a classic and modern remix of Kakariko Village.
Imagine if they made a game out of that where, I don't know, classic Link is from A Link to the Past and modern Link is Skyward Sword Link.
Wow, way to make modern Link sound just as lame as modern Sonic.
Okay, let's not get into that discussion. Now, thankfully, this didn't take me as nearly as long as it did to get the slingshot upgrade in Castletown. Because what you see on screen is a fraction of what I actually recorded, because when I was trying to get the slingshot upgrade, it must have taken me about 40 minutes to get it. I really wasn't accustomed to gyro controls at the time, but since then, and you know, having practiced a lot, I find them to be a really comfortable way of aiming, and it's practically all I use when I use either the slingshot or the bow, really.
I don't know, Tom, I'm still not convinced. Maybe, if you try out some of my speedrunning strats, I'd be willing to give gyro controls a shot.
MBM, the day I become a speedrunner is the day that Zora's domain gets frozen over, and we all know that's never going to happen. Not much has actually changed on Death Mountain, well, not unless you count the boulders cascading down the mountainside, but other than that, there's just a distinct lack of Gorons, except for one in Goron City, well, technically two in Goron City, and a massive frigger right on the mountain's peak. Do you want to explain a little bit more about him, MBM?
Yeah. In the past, there wasn't a giant Goron up there, but apparently in the 7 years, one of the Gorons in the city has been dealing with a weight issue, and now he's grown to astronomical proportions and is perched on top of Death Mountain. He's part of the trading sequence that we will be covering in a later part of the playthrough, so stay tuned.
Ding dong, any Goron home? Oh, guess not.
Tom?
Yeah?
I think the big one ate them all!
Oh my god!
Oh, no, there's still a straggler.
Well, might as well blow him up. Don't want any orphans.
I am so impressed by your stealth bomber method of picking on that poor little Goron. Seriously, my go-to method was usually just holding a bomb and running straight at him, kamikazing him.
Wait, you were meant to do that? I just felt like blowing shit up.
Well, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. At the end of the day, all you need to know is you need to hit this Goron with a bomb.
So, this is Darunia's kid, eh? He seems a bit puny compared to his dad. I doubt he could dance even the simplest of sambas.
Well, he's only 7 years old, Tom. Cut him some slack.
That's true. Was his kid even around back when Link was a child?
No, because apparently he's named after Link, so he has to have been born after we freed up Dodongo's cavern.
Interesting.
So yeah, Goron's not the brightest when it comes to naming their child. Remember that guy who saved us all those tasty rocks? Yes! Let's name our children after him.
Although Gorons are a pretty tough race, if you can tell them a story about a dragon trying to eat their entire race and it will calm them down.
And I know because you people want this to be brought up, so listen up, nerds. If you've read the manga, yes, Volvagia is actually given kind of a cool backstory. Volvagia is actually a dragon that Link bought when he was a child, and then when he returned 7 years later, Ganondorf actually corrupts Volvagia, requiring Link to begrudgingly kill his old friend.
That's a bit more tragic than what happens here.
The manga does that a lot, and what's weird is that a lot of people from Nintendo have said that the manga is meant to fill in the gaps.
I like the manga's interpretation of Majora.
Ooh, they're so good. Also, Volvagia is originally from Adventures of Link, but its name back then was Bolvagia, because apparently the B and the V sound are a little interchangeable.
That's like an original character Do Not Steal version of Volvagia.
So if you've played Wind Waker, the background music of Dragon Roost Cavern is actually a remake of the music used in Dodongo's Cavern and also here in the Death Mountain Crater. It kind of supports the theory that Dragon Roost Island might actually be the peak of Death Mountain. And speaking of music...
Just before we get this song, do you want to explain what a bolero is?
Yeah, a bolero is a genre of slow tempo Latin music. There's actually two main forms. You got the Spanish version and the Cuban version. It sounds kind of like a march, if you want to put it that way.
There is a certain march-like rhythm to the song, yeah.
I also love how fun it was to play on the original, just because it felt like you were mashing buttons to play the bolero. Wow, Koji Kondo, way to totally sample Maurice Ravel's Bolero and not giving him any credit. Seriously, the snare drum part of this song is ripped exactly from that piece.
Is that right?
Yeah, you can look it up, and it's kind of sad. But I will admit that the cutscene when you're playing the Bolero of Fire is actually really good. I love how they switch back and forth the camera view depending on who's playing what part. We would have been able to catch Sheik in his cutscene, but Tom decided not to wear the Goron tunic at this part, so way to go.
You were the one who wanted me to show off the countdown when you're not wearing the Goron's tunic. What the hell?
It's because I have trivia to talk about the timer, duh.
Go on then.
See, the timer actually depends on your current life meter. Not exactly your maximum capacity of hearts, but actually how many current hearts you have. You get 8 seconds per heart because Link's life is actually not divided by quarter hearts, but rather by eighths of hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the odd numbers of eighths aren't shown, so even though on screen it looks like you have a fourth of a heart, you actually could still have 3/8 and survive a 1/4 damage hit.
I was never good in math class, I'm sorry, but that just all flew right over my head.
Well, it's actually not that complicated because there's not a lot of shit in the game that actually does eighth damage. There's really only two things, fire and ice.
Ah, the elements, my eternal rivals. And there he is, it's our sworn brother, who doesn't look a day older despite the fact that 7 years have passed.
I guess they thought it'd be a good idea to start the temple off with a cheery family reunion.
You know what they say, Gorons don't crack.
But they do roll.
True, true. Now, I believe there's a little bit of a staple from here on out for the adult temples.
Yeah, this is actually the first time we see someone in adult dungeon, even though we're told that Saria is supposedly in the forest temple while we're exploring it.
Oh my god, she was actually one of the Poes. Ah!
It's all a big conspiracy. It ties into Twilight Princess. Now, I forget who says it, but there's a reason why the people who just so happen to later become the sages are inside their respective temples. And it's because the sacred realm sends out a call to them that draws them to the temple.
Yeah, someone played an ocarina on a loudspeaker or something. Come to the temples, temples. That's like C up, C down, C right, left. Now, in the Forest Temple, we were recollecting the flames that the Poes stole from the central room. In the Fire Temple, we'll be saving the Gorons from Goron City, because they're basically being offered up as sacrifice to the dragon Volvagia. Ganondorf's pretty sick like that. So, we've got to rescue them from their cages, and luckily enough, each Goron happens to have a key that we will need to progress in the temple.
And I think Darunia is essentially setting you up so that you have no choice but to save all the Gorons, because the boss door is right there. He unlocked it, then he relocked it right behind him. It's like, what? Do you think I'm just gonna leave your Goron buddies to rot in the cell and take on the boss myself? Because that's not too terrible of an idea.
I think, I'm not too sure about this, but you can just take the key, and you don't even have to talk to the Gorons.
Yep, hopefully they'll be able to water their way back to Goron City. You don't actually need the Goron tunic to beat this temple, since only about half the rooms are considered hot enough to warrant needing the protection, which is weird since the whole temple is inside an active volcano, so you would expect the whole place to be really fucking hot.
Well, what you don't realise, MBM, is that generations ago, the Gorons installed super powerful fans that can only be seen with the lens of truth.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. But another bonus of the Goron tunic is that for a short period of time, Link can actually safely walk over lava tiles, poisonous water, and even floor spikes without taking damage. In fact, if you keep rolling or doing backflips at a regular interval, Link is basically invincible.
Damn, that's like the best tunic in the game. Why would you ever want to take it off?
No one ever does. The resistance to other floor hazards besides lava is probably an unintentional consequence to the fact that all these hazards are programmed pretty similarly. But yeah, obviously if you want to go through this whole dungeon with just a Kokiri tunic, it helps to have a lot of hearts, as that will give you a greater timer to make it through the heated rooms.
Yeah, these are like optional runs though. Don't feel that you need to do it just because other people are doing it.
Yeah. And in fact, before wrong warps were discovered, all dungeon speedruns actually did the fire temple last, just so that they could have the increased timer. But now that wrong warps have been found, the fire temple is sort of in the middle, since you can use it to wrong warp from the boss room to the forest temple. And it was weird, because when this first was found, people were like, oh boy, this will totally save some travel time. Little did they know that it would later go on to make the game about 20 minutes.
You thought the speedrunning trivia was over? It's just getting started, baby.
Now, I don't know why, but for the entirety of the dungeon, the Gorons you rescue will insist on calling the bombs their special crop. When last I checked, that word was used to denote the bomb flower. I mean, it's obvious now that whenever Gorons talk about their crop, they're referring to either bombs or bomb flowers. But when I was a kid, I took it so literally that I looked around the entire dungeon for areas where bomb flowers were growing, thinking that they would have a special property within the temple since it was built by the Gorons. I mean, hell, the Goron tunic is made out of bomb flowers.
Really?
Yeah, the tunic is made from the fire of bomb flowers and dodongo scales, which is what makes it heat resistant. Nintendo put way too much thought into the Goron tunic. It's like they left so many other things mysteries, like where did the fairy ocarina go? Who is the running man? When the hell does Link actually go to the bathroom, and instead diverted all of that thought power into explaining the properties of the Goron tunic?
Does that mean the Kokiri tunic is just made out of leaves and the Zora one out of Zora scales?
Possibly, but I think it's more likely that the Zora armor from Twilight Princess would be the one made from their own scales. But I think we'll have to leave their method of how they harvest those scales for a later time.
Pretty much, yeah.
So there's not really much to this room besides a box pushing puzzle. So, Tom, what are your opinions on the Fire Temple as a whole?
I like the Fire Temple. It has a really fun boss. It seems the most straightforward out of Adult Link's dungeons, though, to me at least, next to the Shadow Temple. And I think the only reason it feels as long as it does is mostly because of the dark colour palette and the music, which is a tad banal, really.
Yeah, I have to agree with you that it feels longer than it needs to be, but I think that comes from the fact that we're just repeating the same puzzle over and over with saving the Gorons. However, that aside, I do think that the dungeon is effectively serving multiple purposes all at once. I mean, first, it shows what Ganon's rule has done to the Gorons, and it's not good, so that helps build up your motivation to want to kill him even more. Second, the dungeon kind of puts Link's ability to interconnect multiple rooms to solve a single puzzle to the test. And finally, it shows that Link isn't on an independent quest doing his own thing. I mean, he's actually saving the entire Goron village, one Goron at a time, so it makes it kind of cooler for him to be the hero at the end.
Boy, sure is Matthew Matosis in here.
All opinions expressed by MBM are the sole property of MBM, and any opinions said likewise were likely stolen from MBM.
Oh wow, all of a sudden it's gone Link to the Past on us with the camera angle and whatnot.
This really is one of the few times a 3D Zelda game shouldn't draw on their 2D predecessors.
Yes, this rolling rock room, as we shall now call it, is a pretty devious room. You might think these boulders follow a set path, but no, these boulders are sentient and they want you dead.
It's like these boulders can sense Tom's recording footage and they're all like, that's a nice playthrough you have going there. Be a real shame if something were to cause you to do a retake.
Yeah. Now, we're going to be going through this room multiple times, both on the floor and above, but for the time being, the only real points of interest are in the two Gorons being held captive. One's on the north side, and one's on the south.
I'm honestly concerned about us freeing Gorons in this highly dangerous room. Like, do the boulders just ignore them while they're escaping, or what?
Well, they're Gorons, MBM. They eat rocks for breakfast, literally.
Then why aren't the rocks missing when you free the Gorons? Think, Tom!
Dear God, Ganondorf's breeding an army of sentient rocks. Now, stupid jokes aside, I've noticed that we haven't really been using any of the items that we've acquired so far, like dungeon-specific items, like you get the fairy's bow from the forest temple. Does that get brought up at any point during the fire temple?
In a room coming up, there's actually an eye switch that you can hit with the arrow to unlock some bars, but it's actually not required because the area you access, you can very easily just walk around and enter it another direction. So, no, nothing in the fire temple requires arrows. So, aside from just difficulty and taking Navi's advice, there's honestly no good reason that you can't complete the fire temple before the forest temple.
Yeah, now, this is probably one of the, I don't want to really say lesser known ones, but at least common routes that I've seen people take. Most people bring up the whole, oh, you can do the Shadow Temple first and Spirit last, or Spirit before Shadow, really.
Yeah, a lot of kids will say that this is their first example of sequence breaking, and I'm not surprised.
Now see, right here, this little tunnel is where you get the dungeon map for the Fire Temple, but if you don't have the arrows, if you've decided to do Fire Temple first, you can go around, like MBM said, and like jump down from a ledge and boom, there you go.
These two rooms are interconnected, and you're going to have to catch on to that really quick if you want to solve the next few puzzles. However, I got to get some ranting off my chest, so I'm going to take a second here to explain why I absolutely hate this room in the Master Quest version. See, in that version, for some weird reason, there is an eye switch hanging around the ceiling, and it is because of that that I got stuck here for months in the Master Quest version, because who puts an eye switch on the ceiling? And what's more, there's an iron knuckle in here. Why? Because it's Master Quest, so prepare your anus. And I'm sorry about all this, I'm sorry that I'm getting so angry, but believe it or not, I actually really like Master Quest. I mean, the increased challenge fully utilizes the fact that the dungeons are actually three-dimensional, and the puzzles go above and beyond just find a switch, hit the switch, go on to the next room. It's just that with the Fire Temple, they went on maximum overtroll. I mean, the first puzzle that you have to solve requires you to use Din's fire to light torches. You're in the Fire Temple. Why do I have to light more shit on fire?
You'd think you'd just be able to push it into the lava and solve the puzzle, really.
They kind of put everything at eye level in the original, so it didn't really matter. But with Master Quest, you have to look up, look down, and yes, it utilizes the technology, but it's annoying.
It's funny that you had trouble with the Fire Temple, because in Master Quest, it was Dodongo's Cavern that stumped me for the longest time, because they love just putting switches at different places in the Master Quest version of Dungeons and Temples. Now, it would be remiss of us not to discuss one of the biggest changes actually made to the Fire Temple, and that would be the music. So MBM, feel free to rattle off your Wikipedia-like archive of information.
I told you, it's not Wikipedia-like, I am Wikipedia.
Go for it.
In early versions of the game, the music played in the Fire Temple contains religious-themed vocals of the Muslim faith. One line translated into English actually states, "I bear witness to no God but Allah." Versions 1.0 and 1.1 of Ocarina of Time have the Islamic chanting, and versions 1.2 and onward do not. Instead, the song is replaced with what seems to be a remix of the Shadow Temple's music. The song has no discernible lyrics and only has moans and a female chorus that can kind of be heard.
I'm not a fan of religious chanting in songs. I find it overtly creepy, to be honest. So, do you think that was like an internal decision by Nintendo? Did anyone actually complain?
No one actually complained. There are no reports of any Islamic leaders or anyone else actually protesting or complaining to Nintendo about this change. And honestly, I am disappointed that they altered the music, because whereas you find it overtly creepy, I find that the music added a lot to the atmosphere of the temple. I mean, it matched the aesthetic perfectly, and frankly, the new music is boring as shit.
It is a little bit banal, like I said earlier.
And honestly, I don't see the issue again with using vocals that were only inspired by Islamic chants. It's not like they took an actual chant and just put it into the song. I mean, especially when it adds to the experience. What, are people afraid that listening to something vaguely Arabic is going to cause their children to convert or something?
Islam is the light. Islam is the light.
Seriously, if Nintendo really did have a sinister plot to brainwash the children of the world under one faith, I'm pretty sure they would go with either Shinto or Buddhism, as those are the two most popular religions in Japan. Or, you could take into account that about 67% of the population actually identifies themselves as non-religious.
Or, Jedi.
I converted to that about 2 years ago. But the music isn't the only change between versions. Other changes are things like text box had certain spelling and punctuation errors fixed. There were also certain text boxes that could be skipped in version 1.0, but that was changed in later versions. And I think the most famous version change that most people know about is a certain instance of blood in the game was edited to maintain the game's E for everyone rating.
Is it too early to bring that up, do you think?
I don't know, we're talking about versions now.
Well, go for it then.
I guess the follow-up question after this is, well, how do I know what version I have? Well, if you have an N64 cartridge, if you look on the back, there's a small punch code. If the code is just 2 numbers, you have version 1.0. If it's 2 numbers followed by the letter A, you have version 1.1. 2 numbers followed by the letter B, sucks to be you, but you have version 1.2. Pretty much all gold cartridges are 1.0, and I hate to break it to you, but all PAL versions are 1.2.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep. If you're playing the GameCube re-release that came with Wind Waker or the Wii's Virtual Console, then you're actually playing an edited version of version 1.2.
Oh god, in all the excitement of MBM's version change talk, I completely forgot the maze. Visually interesting? Kind of a pain to go through, because it's a bit like trial and error, and they brought this kind of thing back in Majora's Mask when you actually race the Deku Butler to get the Mask of Sense. It's okay, I guess, not particularly difficult, except for when they throw rocks at you as well, but I don't think these ones home in on you, so at least they're giving you a bit of breathing space in this regard.
The maze really just adds to the slow pacing of the temple as a whole. I mean, rescuing the Gorons forced you to stop and explore an entire room before moving on. And now this maze forces you to slowly test out your route unless you want to suffer severe burn damage.
Yeah, it's a very roundabout way of performing a rescue operation, but what you gotta do, this is Zelda, I guess.
And to make matters worse, they throw a twist at the end by setting a timer so that you have to quickly navigate the final bit of the maze.
You forced us to go slow and now you want us to go fast. Make up your mind, Ocarina.
Several of the Gorons that we rescued mentioned that there are fake doors within the temple and that you have to use the special crop to reveal the real door. The fake doors are pretty obvious since they look like they were ripped right out of another dungeon.
It's just like the fake doors in Luigi's Mansion, the original one on the GameCube. If you vacuum a door and it rattles, it's real, but if it doesn't, it's fake. So that's a good way of being able to tell which is real and which isn't.
So the mini-boss is the Flare Dancer, and the best way I have to describe him is, they're a bomb with legs that decided to make itself a body out of fire.
Whatever floats your boat, I guess.
And the Flare Dancers actually have a really weird property to them, in that they're actually weak to the Master Sword.
No shit.
Well, I understand that you use the Master Sword to kill everything in this game, but the thing is that the Flare Dancers are extra weak to the Master Sword. So much so that the Master Sword will actually do more damage to them than the big Goron sword.
Really?
Yeah, and it's so weird because no other enemy besides the final boss has this particular property.
Well, that was kind of easy.
Thankfully, the mini-boss actually drops bombs, because you'll be needing them for the rest of the temple.
Yeah, I actually ran out of bombs, and it took me ages to scavenge some more to blow up that hole in the floor way back when.
It's always nice when Nintendo actually thinks the drop rates through and actually helps the player along. So this puzzle is reused from earlier in the temple, where you have to use a switch in order to lower a wall of fire to climb up a fence. And these puzzles are really cool because now that Link has started to pick up more items and is building up his arsenal, the game gets more interesting because now you have multiple ways to solve a puzzle. One way is you can drop a bomb to hit the switch, giving you time to run over to the fence. Another way is you can use the hook shot and still run over to the fence in time.
Personally, I prefer to use the bombs because I don't have the best reflexes, so I like to give myself a little bit of breathing space, as it were.
This is actually a problem that I find personally, and it's really nothing wrong with the level design in and of itself, but I really hate this room. Mostly because you have to run across this ledge right next to a several story drop. I mean, it was really difficult for me as a child because it was a combination of the N64 graphics, the N64 joystick, and my weak, jittery child hands, but I just couldn't help but freak out and jerk the control stick, run too close to the ledge, and activate Link's auto jump and fall into the hole of doom.
Oh, that auto jump, but at least you get a sweet reward at the end of this little platforming section, the Megaton Hammer.
The legendary Megaton Hammer. Apparently a legendary weapon that's not quite as legendary as the Master Sword, but still quite legendary. You see what happens when you use legendary to describe everything? The word legendary starts to lose its impact.
Just like the Legend of Zelda in general, really. Little bit of satire for you there, kids.
The Adventure of Link actually also had a hammer item, but it was only used for clearing rocks that obstructed your path. It wasn't until A Link to the Past that the hammer was used as a weapon. It was called the Magic Hammer, which was weird because it didn't even require magic to work. Frankly, I wish they had just kept the Japanese name.
Which was?
The MC Hammer.
Oh my god.
Yes, you can literally stop. Hammer time! In the Japanese version of A Link to the Past.
What is life? I just don't know anymore.
It's always refreshing to see that Nintendo actually had a sense of humor back in the day. Now they're too worried about reaching casuals and being friendly to everybody.
I miss the days, not so much when they had like a sense of humour, but when they cross-referenced stuff. Like in the GameCube era, a lot of Nintendo's games cross-referenced each other. Like Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion were kind of intertwined, due to the fact that EGAD developed both Flood and the Poltergust. And in Mario Kart Double Dash, I think it's Luigi's Raceway. I forget the actual name of the track, but it's the first one. Just off the track, there is the Rank A Mansion from Luigi's Mansion, which is pretty cool. And it's just stuff like that maybe I'm just missing it nowadays, but it doesn't seem as prevalent, and it's just a bit sad to see Nintendo treat their franchises so lightly, really.
Yeah, I mean, the cross-references are good, but I really feel that the Japanese branch of Nintendo is way more open to have this sort of meta humor to it, especially since they're not tied down by Western copyright laws, which is why we don't have another Mother game.
Yep. Now, we've pretty much burned through every bit of trivia about the Fire Temple, but what about the Gorons themselves, MBM? Because as of Skyward Sword, they're pretty much one of the oldest races ever to exist in Hyrule, and it's kind of interesting because by the time of Wind Waker, at least in that timeline, there's only 3 of them left.
Yeah, it's really weird because all the old races of Hyrule by the point of Wind Waker have evolved or changed in some way due to the Flood, but the Gorons saw it fit to stay exactly the same. It's like, that's not how evolution works. Usually, a poor, pathetic species gets more adapted and kind of better over time, but I guess the Gorons are apparently the perfect species.
Well, they are stubborn as a rock, but you gotta kind of feel sorry for them, because thinking back to Majora's Mask, one of the weaknesses of Goron Link was that the fact he couldn't swim. If he went into a body of water, he would pretty much drown, take damage, and he'd wind up back on the shore.
Which probably explains why there's only 3 left in the post-Flood Hyrule. The population dropped so drastically that the Zoras eventually moved in on the Goron's turf.
Now, you could argue the fact that, well, there's Gorons aplenty in New Hyrule, but were they brought from Old Hyrule, the one above the floodwater, or did they just exist there to begin with? It's kind of like, not sure really.
Well, there's some in Phantom Hourglass, so what I think it is that those 3 must have repopulated New Hyrule.
One of those Gorons had to have been a female, then.
Well, there's a lot of theories actually on Goron reproduction. I cannot believe that this is actually a thing. Apparently, people think that they asexually reproduce through budding. Because, hey, there's a kid Goron back in the village, so baby's got to be made somehow.
They're rock people, MBM. Rock.
Because internet, Tom. Because internet.
Any other info about the Gorons you care to regale us with?
Yeah, well, you said in New Hyrule that the Gorons also exist there. Well, they also have a fire temple in New Hyrule, unless you're playing the UK version of Spirit Tracks, in which case the fire temple is actually called the Mountain Temple.
We really got gypped in that regard.
It's nowhere near as bad as getting shitty frame rates and missing out on some of the best temple music.
I know.
Tom, this part's getting boring. Can I please talk about more speedrunning tricks?
Well, people may get annoyed, but sure, but only if it's related to the fire temple.
It's actually related to why I'm bored. We're trying to get the boss key, but in actuality, we could have skipped this entire part. See, back in the room where we got the Megaton Hammer, there's actually a corner in the room where, because the hammer has such a huge recoil, you can actually combine that with the hover boots, an item that you usually get by glitching into the Shadow Temple early. You combine the two items to essentially clip yourself out of bounds, and then you fall through the temple. If you remember back, I said that when dungeon maps always load the boss room's loading line. So no matter where you are, if you can actually walk over that loading line, you will load the boss room. So all you have to do is fall into the loading line, and you activate Link walking into the boss room. Dungeon done.
Again, I have to question how people find these out. Is it literally just trial and error?
It's a lot of people just knowing how the mechanics work. I mean, a lot of people know that huge recoil will usually cause you to go through the seams out of bounds. And so people just find convenient areas. As you need the Megaton Hammer to beat the boss anyways, why not try and find a huge skip in that very room?
Any of us?
There actually is another one. There's a way where you can bypass the entire fire maze by using a bomb to essentially super slide your way through all the firewalls. What happens is that you're moving so quickly backwards that the fire actually doesn't have enough time to react, and by the time the flames start going up, you're already on the other side of the maze.
Now, we've exhausted literally everything we can talk about, so really, fan theory time. A lot of people seem to think that because of its position, just in the overworld of Hyrule, that the Fire Temple could possibly have been the Fire Temple from Skyward Sword, or it also could be related to Dragon Roost Cavern from Wind Waker, because in Dragon Roost Cavern there's murals of dragons all over the wall, and it's a dragon similar in style to Volvagia, like a kind of Eastern style dragon.
Yeah, not only that, but like I said way back at the beginning of the part, they used the same music. Also, in Dragon Roost Cavern, there's a giant Dodongo skull, so hell, you can throw Dodongo's Cavern into this whole fan theory conglomeration.
Okay, that is literally everything we can cover in regards to the Fire Temple. Let's go see a Goron beat the ever-loving shit out of a dragon using nothing but his fists.
Pay-per-view only!
How much would that cost in Hyrule, do you think? 50 rupees a pop?
I don't care, it's a show that I would pay any amount to watch.
This arena seems surprisingly bereft of both Dragon and Goron. Should we be worried?
So long as we don't see a smoldering boulder, I think we're okay.
Mr. Platform, where are you going, Mr. Platform? I kind of want to use you to get... Oh, I don't like where this is going. Oh, golly. I think we just found the boss, MBM.
But where's Darunia?
I would hope he's hiding.
So this boss fighting is pretty much whack-a-mole against a dragon. Pretty awesome, right? And pretty straightforward. No. There are actually two Volvagias in this boss fight. You have the Volvagia that flies around, and then the Volvagia that pops out of the ground. They are actually two separate models.
I was going to say, because this one looks a lot different to how it is when it's flying around.
And if that's not cool enough on its own, you can actually damage both models. They share a health bar, so if you damage one, you essentially damage the boss. When the Volvagia that's flying around enters a hole, if you lay a bomb over the hole it flew into, because his model is actually still flying around inside the platform, you can damage him at the same time that you're damaging the other Volvagia that poked its head out of the hole.
Well, why didn't you tell me that when I was fighting the sucker?
I didn't think you were up to the challenge, man.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because I fought Volvagia, and then I had to play back through the Fire Temple on another file, and I kicked its ass in under a minute. It was amazing.
You can find them pretty fast, and for most speedruns you actually have to, since this room does require the Goron tunic to stay alive, so most guys are trying to hurry up and beat the boss just so they don't lose their run. this was a trick I did manage to pass on to Tom, is that at the phase where Volvagia decides to fly out of your lock-on, she starts to drop boulders all over the place. If you hang from the side of the platform, the boulders cannot and will not touch you.
Now, this is a trick that I always used to mess up, because when it said hang off a platform, I thought it was referring to the thing that you stood on before you jumped onto the central platform, but that's gone for good, for at least for the duration of the fight.
Another weird thing about Volvagia is that, while not actually difficult, her hair is the most dangerous thing on her body. When she peeks out of a hole, she sort of does a hair whip. And what's weird about it is that even though it takes off so many hearts, there's not a flinch animation. You can actually go through the fight and not even know that you've lost about all your hearts to her hair alone.
Yeah, take a look at my health bar right there. I mean, it's gone up now because obviously, you know, I quaffed a fairy because I was close to dying, but still.
And some of you may find it weird that I'm using the pronoun she, but yeah, Volvagia is a female. Go figure.
That's about it, really.
When she's flying around, you can actually hit her with arrows. You gotta have mad sniping skills or timing skills, but you can take off at least a point of damage per arrow. So I guess overall, the one word I would use to describe this boss fight is fun. Seriously, it's whack-a-mole against a fire-breathing dragon. Just something about that fired off all the pleasure centers in my small boy mind.
Now pay attention to Volvagia's death animation, because this will be reused throughout the Zelda franchise. I'm looking at you, Malagra.
It's actually already reused. Moldworm in A Link to the Past had this death animation starting from the tail and decaying up to the head.
What is it with the Zelda franchise and wanting us to see decapitated heads?
I don't know what's up with this game and allowing you to lock on to a dead head. It's like you already killed it, Link.
I was this close to pressing the Navi information button, and apparently she does have text that goes along with Volvagia's decapitated head.
I kind of already knew that. I mean, it's actually the exact same Navi text from when Volvagia was alive. It's like Navi wants to continue your onslaught on the already dead dragon. Navi, please, is your thirst for blood never ending?
Well, at least the curse on Death Mountain has ended, and now it's free to spontaneously erupt and possibly cover the entirety of Kakariko in lava. Why do these people live at the bottom of an active volcano again?
Let's take a second to actually talk about the medallions you get from these guys. Mostly about the fact that they do absolutely nothing.
They're pretty much plot coupons.
That hasn't always been the case. See, in early screenshots, it was shown that the medallions were going to be equipable items. You see the wind medallion on the C button in early beta shots. Nintendo has said that at the beginning, the medallions were going to serve the same purpose as the warp songs, in that they would allow you to warp to the temples. Why you would need that is beyond me. But later on, it was believed that the medallions would be combined with the bow and arrow to form elemental arrow shots.
Ah, okay, I see where this is going.
And also, the fire medallion separately has its own theory for original purpose. It very well could be that Din's fire was going to be what the fire medallion was going to be used for.
And maybe Farore's wind from the Forest Temple one?
Yep, as it was the wind medallion originally.
And Nehru's wisdom from the Water Temple medallion?
It's like this guy knows.
Oh man, this has been a long part. The only thing left to do, actually, is to go get the double magic upgrade. Now that we have the Megaton Hammer, we can smash these rocks just up ahead and get into the Fairies Fountain.
Another thing you should notice is that at the center of this crater are two large rock formations. They're known as Spectacle Rock, and they're actually a reference all the way back to the OG Legend of Zelda, where on top of Death Mountain were two rocks that hid the location of Ganon's lair.
Oh, it's like poetry, it rhymes. I'm kind of super accustomed to the button layout for Zelda's Lullaby at this point.
You better start learning to play Zelda's Lullaby faster and soon, because you know what's coming up.
Yeah, I know. That'll be part 13, funnily enough.
Wow, Great Fairy, 7 years, and you don't look a day older.
Well, that's what immortality does for you, I guess.
They are magical that way.
Now, double magic upgrade is quite possibly the best upgrade you can get in the game, especially if you're like me and you love spamming Din's Fire.
It becomes more useful as more of your attacks become magical based, so getting this upgrade is almost essential.
Pretty much, especially for stuff like using items like fire arrows, Din's Fire, Lens of Truth and whatnot. It's just useful in general.
And while you may need one every now and then, looking at you, Tom, you won't need to rely on green potions or magic refills as much now.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this installment of Ocarina of Time 3D. We'll see you all next time, where hopefully the part isn't 40 frigging minutes long. See you then.